Aliens spent a week torturing her until a reckless human came to her rescue. The air in the detention chamber tasted like metal and despair. Princess Azura of Aquilon hung suspended by energy shackles that stretched her arms outward, her once vibrant blue skin now dull with exhaustion. Her tentacle-like hair, normally flowing with life, hung limp around her face. 7 days. 7 days of methodical pain at the hands of Hegemon's faceless enforcers. The defense codes, Princess. The mechanical voice emerged from behind a crimson visor. Your resistance accomplishes nothing but prolonging your suffering. Commander Draith, leader of the Hegemon interrogation unit, circled her like a predator. His dark armor absorbed what little light existed in the chamber. The other mercenaries stood motionless, their identical armor making them indistinguishable from one another. Azura raised her head, her red eyes finding the commander's visor. My people will never bow to Hegemon, not while I still breathe. That, Draith said, producing a neural disruptor from his belt, can be arranged. The device hummed to life, and Azura braced herself for another wave of agony. 7 days of this, and still she hadn't broken. But how much longer could she hold out? Aquilon was the last free world of the Stellar Confederation, the final bastion against Hegemon's relentless expansion. Your Highness, Draith's voice carried a hint of genuine curiosity. Why protect a dead alliance? The Confederation is finished. Aquilon stands alone. Azura's laugh was bitter. We're never alone while free people still resist your corporate tyranny. The neural disruptor inched closer to her exposed midriff, where her tight, dark blue outfit had been torn away. Admirable sentiment. Misguided, but... An explosion rocked the chamber. Alarms blared as the reinforced door buckled inward, smoke billowing through the fresh breach. Through the chaos came a hail of plasma fire, precise and devastating. 3 mercenaries dropped before they could raise their weapons. A figure emerged from the smoke, broad-shouldered, clad in tactical armor with glowing blue and orange accents. His face was human, with sharp features framed by short reddish-brown hair. His eyes locked with Azura's for a heartbeat before he spun to fire at Draith, who barely dodged behind a console. Security breach in detention block 7! Draith shouted into his comm. All units respond. The human moved with practiced efficiency, each shot finding its mark. He reached Azura in seconds, his rifle still trained on the doorway. Princess Azura? His voice was deep, with an accent she couldn't place. Who are you? She managed, her voice raw from screaming. Mads Rowan. He produced a device and disabled her restraints. Friends call me Rogue, former Confederation Starfighter Corps. She collapsed into his arms, her legs unable to support her weight after days suspended. How did you... Questions later. He lifted her effortlessly, her slender form cradled against his armored chest. Right now, we need to move. This whole station's about to become a very expensive firework. Draith emerged from cover, firing wildly. You're dead, human. Both of you. Mads spun, shielding Azura with his body while returning fire. His shot caught Draith in the shoulder, sending the commander sprawling. Bastard's right about one thing, Mads said, moving toward the exit. We'll be dead if we don't reach my ship in the next 15 minutes. I've rigged this station's reactor to overload. Azura stared at him in disbelief. This is Hegemon's largest mobile fortress shipyard, and there are 30,000 troops stationed here. Mads's grim smile told her everything. Not for much longer. They moved through corridors bathed in red emergency lighting, alarms wailing around them. Mads set her down only when they reached a maintenance shaft. Can you climb? He asked, concern evident in his eyes. Azura straightened, drawing on reserves of strength she didn't know she had. I'm the daughter of warriors, human. Lead the way. For the first time, a genuine smile crossed his face. That's the spirit, Princess. Let's get the hell out of here. As they ascended through the bowels of the station, Azura realized she was witnessing the beginning of something momentous. Though whether it was her salvation or merely a different kind of doom remained to be seen. We've got company, Mads shouted as they rounded the corner toward Hangar Bay 12. A squad of Hegemon troops had formed a perimeter around his ship, a sleek matte black vessel with predatory lines and worn hull plates that spoke of countless battles. Azura pressed herself against the wall, her breathing labored but controlled. That's your ship. Looks like it's held together with hope and adhesive tape. "The Phantom's gotten me out of worse scrapes than this," Mads replied, checking his rifle's charge. "Besides, she's faster than she looks. I'll take your word for it, assuming we reach her." Mads glanced at the princess. Despite 7 days of torture, her eyes burned with a determination. Her resilience impressed him more than he cared to admit. 8 guards, standard formation. I count 2 heavy weapons. He handed her a compact blaster from his thigh holster. "Can you shoot?" Azura examined the weapon with practiced ease. "My father insisted all royal children master combat arts. I qualified as an expert marksman at 14. "Remind me never to piss you off," Mads muttered. "On my mark, I'll draw their fire. You take the 2 on the left flank, then make for the ship's ramp. The hatch code is 7734. And you? I'll be right behind you, princess." He winked, the gesture so unexpected it almost made her smile. "Ready?" Before she could answer, he rolled into the open, firing in controlled bursts. 2 guards fell immediately. Azura moved with surprising grace despite her injuries, her shots finding their targets with deadly precision. Alarms continued to wail throughout the station. A mechanical voice counted down over the comm system. "Warning, reactor containment failure in 12 minutes. All personnel evacuate immediately." The remaining guards broke formation, seeking better cover. Mads used the opportunity to advance, his tactical armor absorbing a glancing shot to his shoulder. "Go!" he shouted to Azura, who was already sprinting toward the Phantom. She reached the ramp and punched in the code, the hatch hissing open. A heavy weapons specialist emerged from behind a cargo container, leveling a missile launcher at the ship. Mads dove forward, tackling the mercenary just as he fired. The missile went wide, detonating against the hangar wall. Azura turned at the explosion, raising her blaster. 3 quick shots dropped the last guards approaching from the side entrance. Mads finished the heavy weapons specialist with a brutal elbow strike, then sprinted for the ship. "Start the engines," he called. "Secondary control panel to the right of the pilot's seat." She disappeared inside. Moments later, the Phantom's engines rumbled to life, the sound building to a high-pitched whine that echoed through the hangar. Mads was halfway up the ramp when a plasma bolt seared past his ear. Commander Draith stood at the hangar entrance, his damaged armor smoking, but his aim steady. "You've signed your death warrant, human!" Draith roared. "The full might of Hegemon will hunt you to the edge of the galaxy." "Tell your corporate masters to get in line," Mads replied, firing back. His shot caught Draith in the leg, sending the commander sprawling. Inside the ship, Mads slammed his palm against the hatch control and rushed to the cockpit. Azura had already strapped herself into the co-pilot's seat, her fingers dancing over the unfamiliar controls with surprising competence. "Pre-flight complete," she reported. "Shields at 60%. "That'll have to do." Mads dropped into the pilot's seat, taking manual control. "Hang on, princess. This might get rough." The Phantom lifted off, its landing gear retracting as Mads pivoted the ship toward the hangar's magnetic field barrier. Beyond it lay the endless void of space and freedom. "They're sealing the hangar doors," Azura warned, pointing to the massive metal plates beginning to slide closed. "Standard procedure. Also standard for this situation." Mads punched a sequence into the weapons console. 2 missiles streaked forward, detonating against the door mechanism. "We're making our own exit." The Phantom shot through the gap, debris bouncing harmlessly off its shields. The vast structure of the Hegemon Fortress shipyard spread out before them, its massive bulk blotting out the stars. "Warning, reactor containment failure in 9 minutes," the station's automated voice announced over all frequencies. Azura stared at the fortress receding behind them. 30,000 souls. "Mercenaries, battle droids, and the engineers who build Hegemon's war machines," Mads said, his voice hardening. "The same machines that glassed 3 Confederation worlds. The same troops that executed civilians on Proxima 4. "I wasn't judging you," Azura said quietly. "My people have suffered more than most under Hegemon's expansion." Mads's expression softened slightly. "We need to put some distance between us and that station before." The proximity alarm blared. 3 Hegemon interceptors had launched from a secondary hangar, their engines burning hot as they gave chase. "Can this ship outrun them?" Azura asked, scanning the tactical display. "Not in a straight line," Mads admitted, banking the Phantom hard to port. "But they don't know these asteroid fields like I do." He pushed the throttle forward, sending the ship hurtling toward a dense cluster of spinning rocks. The interceptors followed, their superior engines quickly closing the gap. "They're locking weapons," Azura warned. Mads grinned, a predatory expression that transformed his face. "Perfect. Let them waste their missiles." He cut the main engines suddenly, allowing momentum to carry them forward while activating maneuvering thrusters in a complex sequence. The Phantom spun on its axis, now facing their pursuers while still moving backward into the asteroid field. "Return the favor," he said, nodding toward the weapons console. Azura didn't hesitate. Her fingers found the firing controls, and the Phantom's forward cannons spat energy bolts at the lead interceptor. The shots connected, overloading its forward shields. The vessel veered wildly, clipping an asteroid and spiraling out of control. "Nice shooting," Mads said, genuine admiration in his voice as he swung the ship around and accelerated deeper into the field. The remaining interceptors fired missiles that tracked the Phantom's heat signature. Mads wove through the asteroids, using them as shields. 2 missiles detonated against the rocks, but a third stayed on course. "Brace!" he shouted, pulling the ship into a tight barrel roll. The missile streaked past, missing by meters, and exploded against a massive asteroid ahead. The detonation fractured the rock, sending fragments in all directions. One interceptor couldn't evade in time and disintegrated on impact. The last pursuer broke off, retreating toward the station. "Smart move," Mads muttered, checking the chronometer. 3 minutes until that station becomes stardust. They emerged from the asteroid field, and Mads plotted a course away from the impending explosion. In their relative calm, he finally looked properly at Azura, noting the bruises on her blue skin and the exhaustion in her eyes. "Medical kit under your seat," he said more gently. "You should treat those wounds." Azura nodded, retrieving the kit. "Where are we headed?" "Somewhere safe, a trading outpost in the Viridian system. We can resupply and figure out our next move." "Our next move?" Azura raised an eyebrow. "I assumed you'd drop me at the nearest neutral port." Mads checked the rear sensors. "Princess, I just painted a target on both our backs the size of a small moon. Hegemon doesn't forgive, and they don't forget. We're in this together now, like it or not." Before she could respond, a blinding flash lit up the view screen. The shockwave hit moments later, rocking the Phantom despite their distance. "There goes 30,000 problems," Mads said quietly. Azura watched the expanding debris field, her expression unreadable. In the beginning of 30,000 more. The Viridian trading outpost hung in space like a tarnished jewel. A hodgepodge of interconnected modules, shipping containers, and repurposed starship hulls. Once a thriving commerce hub at the crossroads of 3 major trade routes, it had declined since Hegemon's expansion, now serving those who preferred to operate beyond corporate oversight. "Charming place," Azura remarked, as the Phantom approached the docking ring. Her wounds had been treated with the ship's medical supplies, but dark bruises still marked her blue skin. "It's not pretty, but it's neutral territory," Mads replied, transmitting docking codes. "Hegemon doesn't have official jurisdiction here." "Unofficial presence?" "Everywhere has unofficial Hegemon presence these days." He guided the ship into a berth near the outpost's outer rim. But the station administrator, Thorn, doesn't tolerate corporate enforcers disrupting his business. The docking clamps engaged with a metallic thunk. Mads powered down the engines, but left the auxiliary systems running. "We need supplies, information, and a plan," he said, rising from the pilot's seat. "But first, we need to change your appearance. You're too recognizable." In the ship's compact living quarters, Mads rummaged through a storage locker and produced a hooded cloak and a small case. "Dermal pigment modifier," he explained, opening the case to reveal what looked like cosmetics. "Temporary, but effective. And these," he held up a pair of contact lenses, "will change your eye color." Azura took the items, examining them with curiosity. "You come prepared for everything. Survival habit." He turned to give her privacy. "I'll check the ship's systems while you change." When she emerged 10 minutes later, Azura's blue skin had taken on a more purple hue, and her distinctive red eyes were now amber. With her tentacle-like hair tucked beneath the hood, she could pass for any number of near-human species. "How do I look?" she asked. Mads studied her for a moment longer than necessary, like someone who won't immediately trigger a station-wide alert. They disembarked, Mads wearing a civilian jacket over his armor and a cap pulled low over his eyes. The docking bay was busy enough to provide anonymity, but not so crowded as to make movement difficult. "Stay close," Mads murmured as they entered the main concourse. "We'll head to Thorne's office first. If anyone can tell us how hot things are, it's him." The trading outpost's interior was a maze of corridors, market stalls, and shadowy alcoves. The air smelled of exotic spices, machine oil, and too many species packed into recycled air. Azura stayed at Mads' side, her eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. They were halfway to the administrative sector when Mads suddenly pulled Azura into a narrow service passage. His hand went to his concealed blaster. "What is it?" she whispered. "Hegemon facial recognition drones?" He nodded toward the main corridor where small floating spheres moved through the crowd. "They weren't here last time." Azura's expression darkened. "They've moved faster than I expected." "Me too." Mads checked his comm device. "Change of plans. We need to find a public terminal." They navigated the back corridors until they reached a row of information kiosks. Mads inserted a credit chip and began accessing the station's news feeds. "Damn," he muttered as headlines scrolled past. "They're not wasting time." The screen displayed an alert. "Breaking: terrorist attack destroys Hegemon research station. 30,000 casualties. 10 million credit reward for information leading to capture of perpetrators." Below the headline were images, a grainy security still of Mads during the rescue, and a formal portrait of Princess Azura in her royal regalia. "Research station," Azura said bitterly. "They're already controlling the narrative." "That's not all." Mads has scrolled to another alert. "Hegemon has declared martial law in 3 more systems, citing security concerns after the attack, using us as an excuse to tighten their grip." Azura's fist clenched. "My people will suffer for this." Mads closed the feed and removed his credit chip. "We need to move. Thorne's too risky now. He might turn us in for the reward." "Where then?" "I know someone who hates Hegemon more than he loves money." Mads led her deeper into the station's lower levels, where the lighting grew dimmer and the corridors narrower. They descended 3 levels, passing through areas clearly not meant for the general public. Twice they had to hide from security patrols. Finally they reached a nondescript door marked only with a faded symbol that resembled a stylized eye. Mads knocked in a specific pattern. After a moment, a scanner emerged from the wall, bathing him in blue light. "Identity confirmed," a synthetic voice announced. "State your business, rogue." "Seeking sanctuary and information," Mads replied. "For myself and 1 guest." The door slid open, revealing a surprisingly spacious chamber filled with screens, servers, and holographic displays. In the center sat a man with dark skin and silver-streaked hair. His eyes were placed with cybernetic implants that glowed a soft blue. "Mads Rowan," the man said, his voice warm despite his imposing appearance. "I wondered when you'd turn up on my doorstep again." "Hello, Cyrus." Mads stepped inside, gesturing for Azura to follow. "We're in trouble." "When are you not?" Cyrus chuckled, his cybernetic eyes focusing on Azura. "And your companion. Interesting dermal camouflage, Your Highness. But my systems see through such things." Azura tensed, but Mads placed a reassuring hand on her arm. "Cyrus was Confederation intelligence before the fall," he explained. "Now he runs the most sophisticated independent information network in 3 sectors. And I've been watching the fireworks you two have caused," Cyrus said, gesturing to his screens where footage of the station's destruction played on a loop. "Quite the statement, rogue." "It wasn't political," Mads insisted. "I went in for the princess. The rest was tactical necessity." "Perhaps," Cyrus turned to Azura, "but you, Your Highness, have always been political. The last royal of the last free Confederation world." Azura stepped forward. "Then you understand what's at stake. Hegemon won't stop until they control everything." "I understand better than most." Cyrus tapped his cybernetic eyes. "These were Hegemon's parting gift when I refused to use my intelligence network for their benefit." He stood and moved to a central console, bringing up a galactic map with various sectors highlighted in different colors. "Hegemon is using your terrorist attack as justification for a major military push, he explained. They've mobilized 3 battle groups toward Aquilon. Your world has perhaps 2 weeks before they arrive in force. Azura paled beneath her purple disguise. My father's defenses won't hold against that kind of firepower. Not without the Confederation fleet. The fleet isn't entirely gone, Cyrus said, manipulating the holographic display. Just scattered, demoralized. Mads studied the map, his expression hardening. You're tracking Confederation vessels? Those that haven't been captured or scrapped? Yes. Cyrus highlighted a dozen points of light. Mostly frigates and destroyers hiding in nebulae or remote systems. A few cruisers, and this, he zoomed in on a blinking icon deep in unclaimed space. The battleship Indefatigable. Admiral Korik's flagship. Korik survived? Azura breathed, hope flickering in her eyes. With a skeleton crew and damaged systems? But yes. Mads crossed his arms. Even if we could contact these ships, they're scattered across half the galaxy. They'd be picked off one by one trying to reach Aquilon. Unless, Cyrus said with a sly smile, they had a reason to believe they could win. He brought up another display showing schematics of a Hegemon command ship. This is the Dominion, flagship of the battle group heading for Aquilon. It carries the automated command protocols for all Hegemon forces in the sector. A single point of failure, Mads murmured, understanding dawning. Precisely. Disable the Dominion, and the entire battle group becomes disorganized, forced to fall back on manual coordination, which Hegemon commanders are notoriously bad at. Azura studied the schematics. How would we even get near such a vessel? That, Cyrus said, is where things get interesting. He produced a data crystal. This contains clearance codes for a Hegemon supply ship scheduled to rendezvous with the Dominion in 4 days, along with crew identifications that might fit our fugitive friends with some minor adjustments. Mads took the crystal, his eyes meeting Cyrus's. Why help us? This puts you at risk. Because I've spent years watching Hegemon consume everything I once protected. Cyrus's cybernetic eyes dimmed slightly. Perhaps it's time I did more than watch. The Hegemon supply vessel Provisioner was exactly as uninspiring as its name suggested. A blocky, utilitarian craft designed for function over form. Its cargo holds were filled with equipment, rations, and replacement parts bound for the battle group approaching Aquilon. In the ship's cramped crew quarters, Mads adjusted his Hegemon logistics officer uniform, the stiff gray fabric uncomfortable against his skin. He dyed his hair black and added subtle facial prosthetics that changed his appearance just enough to fool casual inspection. How do I look? He asked on turning to Azura. She wore a similar uniform, her skin now a pale green thanks to Cyrus's advanced dermal modifiers. Her tentacle-like hair had been styled into a more conventional appearance, and brown contact lenses hid her natural red eyes. Like every other corporate drone I've ever had the displeasure of meeting, she replied with a small smile, which is precisely the point. 4 days had passed since their meeting with Cyrus. 4 days of preparation, memorizing Hegemon protocols, studying the Dominion's layout, and rehearsing their cover identities. 4 days in close quarters that had shifted something between them, a growing awareness neither had acknowledged aloud. Final equipment check, Mads said, refocusing on the mission. He opened a hidden compartment in what appeared to be standard-issue luggage. Inside lay disassembled weapons, explosives, and electronic countermeasures, all disguised as innocuous maintenance tools. Cyrus's intelligence was good, Azura noted, checking the small blaster concealed in her boot. The real inspection team was diverted exactly as he predicted. Let's hope the rest of his intel is equally accurate. Mads closed the compartment. We'll have approximately 12 hours aboard the Dominion before the actual inspection team reports the diversion. The comm system chimed. Provisioner, this is Dominion Control. You are cleared for docking in Bay 4. Transmit crew and cargo manifests. Azura moved to the communications console, transmitting the forged documents Cyrus had provided. There was a tense moment of silence before the response came. Manifests received and verified. Proceed to docking Bay 4. Welcome to the Dominion, Provisioner. Mads released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. First hurdle cleared. The supply ship's autopilot guided them toward the massive Hegemon flagship. Through the viewport, The Dominion grew larger, a dagger-shaped vessel bristling with weapon emplacements, its black hull absorbing the light of nearby stars. "It's even more imposing up close," Azura murmured. "Size isn't everything," Mads replied with forced levity. "Remember, we just need to reach the command core and upload Cyrus's virus to the automated systems." The provisioner shuddered slightly as docking clamps engaged. Pressure equalized with a hiss, and the airlock indicators turned green. "Showtime," Mads said, shouldering his bag of disguised equipment. "Remember, we're Lieutenant Commander Hale and Specialist Terran, here to perform a routine inspection of life support systems." They stepped you through the airlock onto the Dominion, where a junior officer waited with a data pad. "Lieutenant Commander," the officer greeted Mads with a perfunctory nod. "Your inspection wasn't on our schedule until next week." Mads adopted the weary tone of a career bureaucrat. "Schedules change, Lieutenant, especially with the upcoming operation. Headquarters wants all systems at optimal performance." The junior officer seemed satisfied with this explanation. "Of course, sir. I'll have someone escort you to the life support control room." "That won't be necessary," Azura interjected smoothly. "We know our way around. Standard layout, isn't it?" "Yes, ma'am, though security protocols require—" "Lieutenant," Mads cut in, his voice dropping to a confidential tone, "our inspection includes certain classified modifications. Direct orders from Central Command. I'm sure you understand." The mention of classified orders worked its magic. The junior officer straightened, suddenly eager to distance himself from potential security complications. "Of course, sir. Access has been granted to your credentials. If you need anything, just use any comm panel." Once alone in the corridor, Mads and Azura moved with purposeful strides, projecting the confidence of personnel who belonged. They made their way to a maintenance lift, avoiding the main thoroughfares. "Command core is 6 levels up central section," Azura murmured, consulting a small data pad with the ship's schematics. The lift doors opened, revealing an empty car. They stepped inside, and Mads selected their destination. "So far, so good," he said quietly as the lift began to rise. Azura's expression remained focused. "The hard part is still ahead." The lift stopped unexpectedly 2 levels below their destination. The doors opened to reveal a hegemon officer with commander's insignia, a tall, severe-looking man with a cybernetic eye implant. "Hold the lift," he ordered, stepping inside. Mads and Azura moved aside, offering respectful nods. The commander studied them with his cybernetic eye, which emitted a faint red glow. "I don't recognize you," he said finally. "Lieutenant Commander Hale, sir," Mads replied smoothly. "Life Support Inspection Team. This is Specialist Taran." The commander's organic eye narrowed. "Inspection? I wasn't informed." "Last-minute directive, sir," Azura offered. "With the Aquilon operation approaching, Central Command wants all systems verified." The commander seemed to consider this. His cybernetic eye whirred slightly as it focused on Mads's face. "You look familiar, Lieutenant Commander." Mads maintained his composure, though his hand inched toward his concealed weapon. "I've served on several capital ships, sir. Perhaps we've crossed paths before?" The lift reached the commander's destination, and the doors slid open. For a tense moment, he continued to study them. "Perhaps," he said finally, stepping out. "Carry on." The doors closed, and both Mads and Azura exhaled. "That was close," she whispered. "Too close," Mads agreed. "We need to move faster." That commander didn't seem convinced. When they reached their level, they moved quickly through the corridors, avoiding eye contact with passing crew members. The command core was protected by a security checkpoint manned by 2 guards. "Identification," one guard requested as they approached. Mads presented his forged credentials. "Life support inspection. We need access to the environmental systems adjacent to the command core." The guard scanned the credentials and frowned. "I don't see any scheduled maintenance for this section." "It's not maintenance," Azura explained with practiced patience. "It's a security inspection. The air filtration systems for the command core are being evaluated for potential vulnerabilities." The guard still seemed uncertain. "I'll need to verify this with my superior." "By all means," Mads said, maintaining his bureaucratic persona. Though Commander Vex might not appreciate being disturbed during the tactical briefing, he personally authorized this inspection. The name drop worked. The guards exchanged glances, neither wanting to interrupt a senior officer's meeting for what seemed like routine procedure. "Proceed," the first guard said, stepping aside, "but stick to the environmental systems only. Command Core itself is restricted." "Of course," Mads assured him, "we're only interested in the filtration network." Once past the checkpoint, they located a maintenance access panel that, according to Cyrus's schematics, connected to a service corridor running parallel to the command core. "Cover me," Mads whispered, kneeling to open the panel. Azura positioned herself to block the view from the corridor, while Mads worked. Within moments, he had the panel open, revealing a narrow crawl space. "Ladies first," he said with a grim smile. Azura slipped into the opening, followed by Mads, who carefully replaced the panel behind them. The service corridor was dimly lit by emergency lighting, barely wide enough for them to crawl through. 200 meters ahead should be an access point to the command core's secondary systems, Azura said, consulting her datapad. They moved as quietly as possible, aware that sound might carry through the thin walls. After several minutes of uncomfortable crawling, they reached a junction where several conduits converged around a small access terminal. "This is it," Mads confirmed, examining the terminal. "From here, we can access the automated command protocols." He removed a device from his bag and connected it to the terminal. The screen flickered to life, displaying Hegemon's security protocols. "Cyrus's bypass codes better work," Azura muttered, watching as Mads input a complex sequence. The screen flashed red momentarily, then green as the security measures were overridden. Mads inserted the data crystal containing the virus. "Upload beginning," he reported. "This will take approximately 5 minutes." Azura checked her timepiece. "We've been aboard for nearly 2 hours, 10 more until our cover is blown." "Plenty of time to complete the mission and get back to the provisioner," Mads said, though his tone lacked conviction. The terminal beeped softly as the upload progressed. Suddenly, a warning flashed across the screen. "Intrusion detected," Mads read, his stomach sinking. "Secondary firewall engaged." "Can you bypass it?" Azura asked urgently. "I'm trying, but—" An alarm began to wail throughout the ship. Red emergency lights pulsed in the narrow service corridor. "Security alert," a mechanical voice announced over the ship-wide comm. "Unauthorized access detected in command systems. All security personnel to alert status." "We need to abort," Azura said, reaching for her concealed blaster. Mads shook his head, fingers flying over the terminal. "The upload is at 70%. If we leave now, this was all for nothing." Heavy footsteps echoed from somewhere beyond the service corridor. Security teams mobilizing. 80%, Mads reported, sweat beading on his forehead. The access panel they'd entered through clanged open in the distance. Flashlight beams swept through the service corridor. "Contact in maintenance shaft 7B, a voice called out. "Proceeding to investigate." 90%, Mads whispered. "Almost there." Azura positioned herself between Mads and the approaching security team, her blaster ready. "Finish it, I'll hold them off." "Upload complete," Mads announced, disconnecting the device. "Virus is in their system. Now we just need to stay alive long enough for it to work." The first security officer appeared at the far end of the corridor, weapon raised. "Freeze! Hands where I can see them." Azura fired, her shot striking the wall near the officer and forcing him to duck back. "We need another way out." Mads examined the junction where they were positioned. "These conduits connect to the ship's ventilation system. If we can reach it..." More security personnel appeared, firing stun blasts that sizzled past them. "Cover me," Mads said, holstering his weapon to work on the sealed ventilation access. Azura returned fire, careful to aim near the security team rather than at them. They were trying to escape, not add to their body count. The ventilation cover came free with a metallic groan. "Got it," Mads called. "Go!" Azura fired one more covering shot before diving into the ventilation shaft. Mads followed, pulling the cover closed behind them, just as stun blasts peppered their previous position. "Where does this lead?" Azura asked as they crawled rapidly through the narrow space. "According to the schematics, there should be an access point near the shuttle bay," Mads replied. "If we can reach it, we might be able to steal a shuttle." The ship lurched suddenly, throwing them against the sides of the shaft. "What was that?" Azura gasped. The answer came over the ship-wide comm. "All personnel, battle stations, multiple unidentified vessels have entered the system. Confederation IF signatures detected." Mads and Azura exchanged shocked looks. "The fleet," she whispered. "They've come." Cyrus, Mads realized. He must have contacted them after we left. Another impact rocked the ship. The ventilation shaft groaned under structural stress. The virus must be working, Mads said. Their automated defense systems should be compromised. They continued through the ventilation system, guided by Mads' memory of the schematics. After several tense minutes, they reached an access point that, according to the plans, should open near the auxiliary shuttle bay. Mads peered through the grating. The corridor beyond was empty, emergency lighting casting everything in a red glow. "Coast is clear," he reported, pushing the grating open. They dropped into the corridor, weapons ready. The ship shuddered again as another impact struck somewhere distant. "Shuttle bay should be just ahead," Mads said, leading the way. They rounded a corner and froze. The commander with the cybernetic eyes stood before the shuttle bay entrance, a heavy blaster leveled at them. "I knew there was something off about you two," he said, his artificial eye glowing ominously. "The famous Rogue Rowan and Princess Azura of Aquilon. Hegemon will reward me handsomely for your capture." Mads and Azura raised their hands slowly, weapons still gripped loosely. "Your ship is under attack, Commander," Azura said calmly. "The Confederation fleet has rallied. Surrender now and there needn't be further bloodshed." The commander laughed. "A token resistance at best. Once we crush them, Aquilon falls and the last ember of the Confederation dies." "You're wrong," Mads said, taking a careful step forward. "Hegemon's days of unchallenged dominance are over. People are rising up across the galaxy." "People?" the commander sneered. "Insects beneath our boot. Now drop your weapons, or—" The ship lurched violently, more severely than before. The commander staggered, momentarily off balance. Mads and Azura moved in perfect synchronization. She fired at the commander's weapon while Mads lunged forward, tackling him to the ground. The commander was stronger than he looked. His cybernetic eye emitted a blinding flash, disorienting Mads. A mechanical fist connected with Mads' jaw, sending him sprawling. Azura fired again, but the commander activated a personal shield that deflected the blast. He drew a secondary weapon from his boot and aimed at her. Mads recovered just in time, sweeping the commander's legs from under him. The shot went wide, scorching the ceiling. They grappled on the floor, evenly matched until Azura joined the fray, striking the commander's cybernetic implant with the butt of her blaster. The device sparked and malfunctioned, causing the commander to howl in pain. Mads delivered a final blow that rendered him unconscious. "Nice teamwork," he panted, retrieving his weapon. "We're not done yet," Azura reminded him, moving to the shuttle bay doors. Inside, they found a row of small personnel shuttles. Alarms continued to blare throughout the ship, but the bay itself was deserted. All hands called to battle stations elsewhere. "That one," Mads pointed to a sleek courier shuttle. "Fastest model they have." They boarded quickly, Mads taking the pilot's seat while Azura secured the hatch. The shuttle systems came online at his touch. "Unauthorized launch detected in the auxiliary Bay 3, the ship's computer announced. "Security protocols engaged." "Not for long," Mads muttered, inputting commands. "Our virus should have compromised those too." The bay doors remained stubbornly closed. Azura moved to the co-pilot seat, scanning the controls. "Manual override required," she reported. "Someone needs to activate it from that console." She pointed to a station outside the shuttle. Mads cursed. "We're so close." "I'll do it," Azura said, rising from her seat. "No," Mads caught her arm. "It's too dangerous. I'll go." Their eyes met, and in that moment, everything unspoken between them hung in the air. "We need a pilot," she said softly. "And I need you to live, Mads Rowan." Before he could protest further, she leaned down and kissed him, brief but intense, a promise and a goodbye. "Azura, wait!" But she was already moving, slipping out of the shuttle and sprinting toward the control console. Mads watched helplessly as she reached it and began the override sequence. The bay doors began to slide open, revealing the chaos of space beyond. The Dominion was engaged with multiple Confederation vessels, energy weapons crisscrossing the void. Azura completed the sequence and turned back toward the shuttle. Their eyes met across the distance, a smile forming on her blue lips. Then the bay doors suddenly froze, half open. Security personnel burst into the bay, weapons raised. "Go!" Azura shouted, drawing her blaster and firing at the newcomers, forcing them to take cover. Mads hesitated for only a heartbeat before engaging the shuttle's engines. The craft lifted off, maneuvering toward the partially open doors. "I'll come back for you," he promised, though she couldn't hear him. The shuttle squeezed through the gap, scraping its hull but making it into open space. Behind him, through the viewport, Mads saw Azura surrounded by security personnel, her hands raised in surrender. The Dominion loomed above, its weapons focused on the Confederation ships rather than his small shuttle. The virus had worked. Their automated targeting systems were compromised, their communications in disarray. Mads set course for the nearest Confederation vessel, opening a comm channel. "A Confederation ship, this is Mads Rogue Rowan on stolen Hegemon shuttle, requesting immediate docking and assistance. I have critical intelligence, and we need to plan a rescue mission." Admiral Korik was exactly as Mads remembered him. Tall, imposing, with silver hair cropped close to his scalp, and eyes that had seen too much war. The bridge of the Indefatigable hummed with activity as officers coordinated the ongoing battle against the Hegemon fleet. "Your virus worked better than we could have hoped," Korik said, studying the tactical display where Hegemon vessels moved in disorganized patterns, their coordinated defense shattered. "Cyrus contacted us 3 days ago with your plan. Risky but brilliant." "It's not finished," Mads insisted, pointing to the Dominion. "Princess Azura is still aboard that ship. We need to get her out." Korik's expression hardened. The mission was to disrupt Hegemon's advance on Aquilon. "We've accomplished that. A rescue operation is non-negotiable," Mads interrupted. "She's the heir to Aquilon and the last royal of the Confederation. More importantly, she's the reason any of this worked." The Admiral studied Mads for a long moment. "You care for her?" It wasn't a question, but Mads answered anyway. "Yes." Korik nodded slowly. "Then let's get her back." On the Dominion, Azura stood before Fleet Admiral Drace, her hands bound but her posture proud. The Admiral's office shook occasionally as Confederation weapons found their mark against the weakened shields. "You've caused quite the disruption, Your Highness," Drace said, his voice surprisingly calm given the circumstances, "though I admit I'm impressed." "Surrender your fleet, Admiral," Azura replied. "End this before more lives are lost." Drace laughed softly. "Even captured, you make demands." He moved to the viewport, watching the battle unfold. "Our automated systems are compromised, but we still outnumber your ragtag fleet. This is merely a setback. Is that what you'll tell the Hegemon board when they ask why you lost their flagship and failed to take Aquilon?" The Admiral turned, his expression calculating. "Perhaps we can help each other, Princess. Hegemon values efficiency above all. This conflict has become inefficient." Before Azura could respond, the ship rocked violently. Emergency klaxons blared. "Admiral," an officer's voice came over the comm. "Multiple breaches in sectors 7 through 9. Confederation boarding parties." Drace's composure cracked. "Impossible. How did they penetrate our shields?" The virus," Azura said with a small smile. "It didn't just affect your targeting systems." The Admiral drew his sidearm, aiming it at Azura. "You'll make an excellent hostage." "I think not," came a voice from the doorway. Mads stood there, armored in Confederation battle gear, his rifle trained on Drace. Behind him, Confederation Marines secured the corridor. "Lower your weapon, Admiral," Mads ordered. "Your ship is lost." Drace's finger tightened on the trigger. "One step closer and the princess dies." "The princess," Azura said calmly, "is not helpless." In one fluid motion, she dropped to the floor, sweeping Drace's legs from under him, with a move Mads had taught her during their days aboard the Phantom. The Admiral's shot went wide, and before he could recover, Mads was on him, disarming him with practiced efficiency. "You okay?" Mads asked, cutting Azura's bonds, while Marines secured the Admiral. "Better now," she replied, her eyes meeting his. "You came back for me." "Always will," he promised. The Confederation fleet, bolstered by ships that had emerged from hiding across the sector, surrounded the crippled Hegemon forces. On the Indefatigable's bridge, Admiral Korik received the surrender of Fleet Admiral Drace, formally ending Hegemon's campaign against Aquilon. "This is just the beginning," Korik told the assembled officers. "Hegemon still controls much of the galaxy, but today we've shown they can be defeated." Mads stood at the back of the bridge, Azura at his side. Her hand found his, fingers intertwining. "What happens now?" he asked quietly. "Now," she said, "we rebuild." The Confederation wasn't just ships and stations. It was an idea that different worlds, different species could stand together as equals. "Sounds like a lot of work." Azura smiled. "Are you offering to help, Rogue?" "I go where you go, Princess." He squeezed her hand. "Though I'm not much for politics. We need fighters as much as diplomats." Her expression grew serious. "Hegemon won't take this defeat lightly. There will be retaliation." "Let them come," Mads said with the confidence that had first drawn her to him. "We've shown what's possible when people stand together." Admiral Korik approached them, interrupting their moment. "Your Highness, we've established communication with Aquilon. Your father wishes to speak with you." Azura nodded. "Thank you, Admiral." As she moved to follow Korik, Mads held her hand a moment longer. "I should probably make myself scarce for that conversation. Not sure how the king would feel about his daughter and a human pilot." "My father," Azura said with a mischievous smile, "will have to accept that the princess chooses her own path and her own companions." She leaned in, kissing him briefly but tenderly. "Don't go far, Rogue. I'm not finished with you yet." 6 months later, the gardens of the royal palace of Aquilon bloomed with exotic flowers of every color. The capital city had been rebuilt after Hegemon's failed assault, more beautiful than before. In a secluded alcove, away from the diplomatic functions and rebuilding efforts, Mads and Azura walked hand in hand. "The Confederation alliance now includes 17 systems," Azura reported, her free hand resting on the gentle swell of her abdomen. "Each day, more break away from Hegemon control." "And Hegemon itself?" Mads asked. "Fractured. The board of directors is divided on how to respond to our victories. Some want all-out war. Others see the writing on the wall and are looking to negotiate." Mads nodded, his thumb tracing circles on the back of her hand. "And us? Any word on how the council is taking the news?" Azura laughed softly. "That their princess is carrying a human child? There was some consternation at first, but my father reminded them that new beginnings require new thinking." She stopped, turning to face him. "Besides, the medical reports confirm our child will be healthy, a perfect blend of both worlds." Mads placed his hand over hers on her stomach. "I never imagined this future. After the Confederation fell, I was just surviving, fighting because I didn't know how to do anything else. And now I have something to fight for. Someone." He leaned down, kissing her with a tenderness that still surprised him. "Two someones, soon enough." A soft chime interrupted them, Azura's communicator signaling an incoming message. "The Hegemon delegation has arrived," she sighed. "Duty calls." "Want me there?" Mads asked, though they both knew the answer. "Always, though try not to glare too much at the Hegemon representatives. We're aiming for peace, remember? I'll be on my best behavior," he promised with a roguish grin, "for you and the little one." As they walked back toward the palace, the twin sons of Aquilon cast their golden light across the rebuilt city. Ships from a dozen worlds moved through the sky above. Not warships now, but vessels of commerce and cooperation. "You know," Mads said thoughtfully, "when I broke into that Hegemon station to rescue you, I never expected to help restart a galactic alliance. And I never expected my rescuer would become the father of my child and co-architect of a new confederation," Azura replied. "Life has a way of surprising us." Speaking of surprises," Mads stopped, dropping to one knee before her. From his pocket, he produced a ring, a band of Aquilonian silver inlaid with Earth sapphires. "I know our worlds have different traditions, but on Earth we do this." Azura's eyes widened, her free hand moving to her mouth. "Princess Azura of Aquilon," Mads continued, his voice steady despite the hammering of his heart, "will you marry me? Not for politics or alliances, but because I love you more than I ever thought possible." Tears glistened in her red eyes. "Yes," she whispered, 1,000 times, "yes." As he slipped the ring onto her finger and rose to embrace her, cheers erupted from a nearby balcony. They turned to see King Theron of Aquilon, Admiral Korik, and a dozen other allies watching with broad smiles. "Were they there the whole time?" Mads asked, embarrassment coloring his cheeks. Apparently, Azura laughed. But I wouldn't have it any other way. Our story has always had an audience. Our story, Mads echoed, holding her close. I like the sound of that. Above them, Confederation ships performed a ceremonial flyover, their contrails painting the sky in celebration of a future neither of them could have imagined when a reckless human male came to rescue a tortured alien princess and found his own salvation in the process.